Hi, this is David Hanson. I want to talk about the issue of Iran for a moment. I see a lot of Republican candidates drumbeating for war with Iran. Actually, we've seen this for a few years, but I continue to see this increasingly extreme rhetoric against let's drumbeat the war for Iran, let's confront Iran because Iran could be the biggest threat to humanity we've ever faced. I don't like Iran either, at least their regime. I think their regime, has some really weird statements they've made. However, I think there's a lot of gross distortments that have been circulated throughout the mainstream media in America, which has kind of given us a bad understanding about how to deal with Iran. You see, all the Republican candidates, at least the ones that the media seems to pay the most attention to, continue to say that the way we should deal with Iran is we must sanction them. We must continue to put down extreme sanctions and blockade them from having access to basic goods. I have a problem with that because I think sanctions attack the people who are in the everyday citizenry of a country. They have a consistent historical record of not dealing with the regimes that are being targeted, but actually impoverishing and killing innocent civilians. Now, Iran is a unique situation because Iran's population actually is extremely pro-American by Middle Eastern standards. In fact, Iran's population is often more pro-American than nations we fund and subsidize, such as Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Iraq, and Afghanistan. I find that peculiar. What do you think? But anyways, I think that sanctions have a consistent historical track record of actually enabling regimes that we want to get rid of. And that's not a good idea. You see, in Iran right now, Ahmadinejad is a very weak president. He's facing opposition from two main sides. One is a very pro-Western reformist movement. They're a young group. You saw them rallying and protesting earlier. Another group we see is the financial power conservative establishment in Iran. And they are very pragmatic. Both of those groups are not interested in Ahmadinejad's flamboyant nationalistic rhetoric. They're actually wanting him to curtail that extreme rhetoric and kind of take a more tactful approach with dealing with the outside world. So what we do when we sanction Iran is we actually enable Ahmadinejad. We actually attack his opposition. We actually destroy the internal opposition that if we had stopped sanctioning them, if we had actually offered trade, and free trade and peace towards the people of Iran, we could actually increase and encourage some democratic reforms and uprisings against Ahmadinejad's type of government. And I think that's the best way we should approach Iran. You see, I want to get rid of Ahmadinejad, or at least the kind of rhetoric that he expresses. I don't want to have a Middle East where there's constant threats of rabble-rousing. But there's a lot of misconceptions about Iran. In fact, our chief of the Defense Intelligence Agency, Lieutenant General Ronald Burgess, has said that there's no evidence that Iran wants to attack any country in the region or abroad. In fact, Iran doesn't really have much of a navy or an air force to do so if they even wanted to. A lot of Republican candidates often say that Iran wants to attack Israel or wipe them off the face of the earth. But think about that for a moment. Why would Iran nuke Jerusalem or Israel? That would kill tens of thousands of Palestinians and potentially destroy the Dome of the Rock. That's the second holiest site in Islam. How would that promote Islam? I just don't understand that. I think the best way to defeat extreme regimes is to follow the advice of the founding fathers. They advocated strategic independence. And this is a very interesting approach because I think oftentimes our knee-jerk reaction to go to war with anybody that scares us in the world scene is simply playing checkers while our enemies are playing chess. I think the founding fathers realized that to deal with acts of terrorism or deal with rogue nations, it's best to play a strategic independence because it's a more savvy approach to defeating terrorism. You see, Osama bin Laden, he said that he wanted to drain America by getting them into Middle Eastern wars that would drain their economy and bankrupt our country. He wanted to bait us into the Middle East. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to follow right into his trap if we go to war with Iran. It'll cost us possibly trillions of dollars to wage such a conflict, which is simply unnecessary, especially we're on the brink of bankruptcy like we're facing today. So I think the way we should deal with Iran is follow the advice of the founding fathers, No entangling alliances, as George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, John Quincy Adams, and many others said. Stay out of the affairs of other nations. We should not go abroad in search of monsters to destroy. That's how we'll defeat Iran, because if we get out of that region, the Al-Qaeda, they do not like the Shia extremists that are in Iran. So if we pull out of that region, they're going to revert back to attacking each other, which is what they were doing before we got involved in the region. And so actually we can neutralize both of our enemies, the extremists in the Shiite region, the Shia extremists and the Al-Qaeda extremists. We can neutralize them by pulling out of that region, saving ourselves from bankruptcy, and allowing them to neutralize each other. That's all for now, guys. Let's continue to spread the message about the way that we can defeat nations like Iran. And let's not listen to the propaganda and fear mongering that we see in the media. Thank you.